Hey, welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Signal Caller. I'm your host Dwayne Douglas, along with Solo Lopez, and we're gonna kind of help Antonio Pierce and I almost said Dave Ziegler and Tom Telesco with their search for the new Raiders quarterback here in 2024. It has to happen, otherwise, it's going to be purgatory for the Raiders. They're going to be 7 wins, 8 wins for the next 4 or 5 years. And none of us want that. So, Solo, how you doing today?
Good, man. How's it going? As always, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, and I can't wait to dive in.
So we also have, right below me right now. Go ahead and rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Do all that stuff. Really helps out the show. And leave comments and stuff like that as well. We do appreciate it. It's a really good class of quarterbacks, and we're gonna try to get to as many as and try to get to all of them if we can before the draft. So the draft is 70 days. 70 days away. 70 days away. So right now we are going to talk about Spencer Rattler, and here's some clips from him right now.
He brought us some goodies. Rattler throws wide open. The throw back to Leggett. He's across with by Fugard. First year in South Carolina, transfer from Western Illinois. Rattler did well to stay on his feet. Stogner, Trayvon Kenyon, all gone. They've run in Knox inside of his transfers. Here's Rattler.
On the 36, first and 10. Rattler with plenty of time. He's throwing deep. End zone! Got him! Rattler, let's see what he can come up with here. Under 20 seconds of play and a half. He's heaving it deep. Caught! Rattler looking left, throws. End zone! Touchdown!
All right, so let's dive into Spencer Rattler right now. And before we do, Solo, I did want to give a little bit of a story real quick. I knew obviously we do a lot of research, we do a lot of tape search, everything like that. We kind of run the gamut of looking up information about these quarterbacks before we actually talk about them on the show. But so I just happened to have my phone was just playing on the HomePod and just playing a random podcast. And then I heard a young lady. Her name is Chrissy Ford. She used to be from SI. Now she works for, I guess, USA Today, whatever. And she talked about Spencer Rattler at length, how she liked him. She really she thinks he's going to be a good quarterback. She thinks he's going to be a good quarterback. And then she went into all these reasons why and everything like that. And she bases it on the way he throws the football with his lower half. Like that's the way she dissects quarterbacks. I guess she was one of the few people who thought that Brock Purdy from day one, she thought Brock Purdy was going to be a good quarterback. So she put herself out there for that one. On her Twitter page is a picture of her, obviously in her profile. And the background picture is Stetson Bennett. I thought it was pretty interesting. So it seems like you might have a type of the 6-foot quarterbacks who wanted to succeed in the National Football League. When she was asked about Stetson Bennett and where he was, she said that. She said, "Well, I don't want to talk about what I know." And I was like, "Okay, so she obviously has a relationship, not a relationship, but like a relationship where she knows who he is and stuff like that." But but the one thing she did say that kind of struck a little bit of a nerve with me, and it's something that we talked about for on and on, is she said that he didn't get enough help. And I think so. I went back and looked back at a couple of games, and I said to myself, it's always kind of the marginal quarterbacks, the mid quarterbacks, that we always end up saying, "Hey, guess what? He didn't have enough help. He needs an offensive line. He needs this. He needs that." And I was saying to myself, like, nobody, the guy who's going to be the third quarterback or the second quarterback in this draft, who knows, maybe even the first, Drake May, he didn't have a lot of things at North Carolina, but he still trudged on and is now going to be one of the top picks in the draft. So we can start off with your thoughts initially, and then I'll go into the measurements of Spencer Rattler and his time at Oklahoma, and then now his time at South Carolina.
So obviously, one of the highest recruited players to come out in 2017. He had basically nothing for his true freshman year, and then had a really good redshirt freshman year at Oklahoma. And then things kind of fell apart. So after that first year, I would argue that he has matured past that point, obviously, but in terms of skill wise, I don't think that he's improved from that really good breakout year that he had. And I think there was a lot of pressure on him to turn around and be the next Heisman Trophy winning quarterback under Lincoln Riley. And unfortunately, there was just someone that was much, much better behind him, and the leash was short when you have someone like Caleb Williams as your backup. And in that regard, I think that a lot of that plateaued his development. Maybe it's an attitude thing. I don't know, because I don't know him personally, obviously, and I don't know his coaches or anything like that. But when you enter the transfer portal in a situation, obviously something went wrong in the place you were at before. And so just in terms of the background story of him, it feels a little tumultuous through the Oklahoma days, through the comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, being benched for Caleb Williams, going to South Carolina and not really lighting it up, and now really having to work hard to carve out a spot in this upcoming draft.
Also, I think that too, here's a guy who also – he played well in the Senior Bowl, and I guess so some people made a point that he's the only one who played well in the Senior Bowl.
Sure, yeah.
All the other quarterbacks, but I mean, with that being said, are we supposed to just ignore all the tape that's out there?
No, a lot of that too is as much as I don't put in a lot of stock into the Penix and Nix situation in the Senior Bowl, even though I know a lot of people will. I'm not going to put a lot of stock into, well, he looked really, really good at the Senior Bowl at the quarterback position. Just like Nix didn't really look great, or Penix, kind of bowed out. I'm not going to hold that against any of them, and I'm not going to praise one way or the other. I think there's enough tape on these guys that are going to be 23 and 24, and they've already been through the transfer portal and they're redshirt seniors or what have you. I think there's enough film and enough tape and enough of when we get through the combine, the measurables, the pro day, and all of that. I think there's enough tape to make a pretty good and accurate assessment and evaluation on some of these guys. Now, there are a ton of unforeseeable things that we'll never get the information or access to unless we actually work for one of these teams. But at the same time, it's pretty clear that the tape is the tape when we study it, when we evaluate it, when we look at where these numbers come from and apply context to that. And so I think that's where it's going to hurt him in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, he's for some of the player comps we're seeing is Jaron Hall from BYU, Matt Corral of Mississippi, and then Brock Purdy of Iowa State. So we'll see there. I mean, he did have I'm not sure if they didn't run the ball enough at South Carolina. He did have a running back who averaged 5 yards a carry with Mario Anderson, and then Xavier Legette is going to be a guy who people look at in this draft.
Good wide receiver.
Yeah, 71 catches, 1,000 yards, almost 1,300 yards there as well. So not a lot of spreading the ball around. It looked like more along the lines it was just him. And then the next one was Terry Knox was the next guy with 37 catches. So I mean, if it wasn't really hitting the first year in South Carolina, I mean, that there's an opportunity to transfer again. Or maybe you could, I'm not sure. The transfer rules change dramatically all the time, so maybe you couldn't have transferred out at that point. But 6-foot quarterback, gonna have trouble probably seeing the middle of the field.
Yeah,
he has some up and down games. I mean, I guess the Furman game was the best game he had all year. He also had a good game against Florida. I didn't see enough for me to say. I mean, she thinks he's a first round pick. I don't see how you could. I don't see how you could spend a first round pick on him. If you want to. So, I mean, he seems like a fiery backup as far as that goes. A guy who can come in, spell you for a couple of weeks, give you some energy because he can move a little bit. As far as him taking on the entire roster, and I know some people like are talking about getting Raider fans to warm up a little bit to um, the idea of him being their quarterback. I don't think that's the plan. I would be very that would be kind of tough tough pill to swallow if that did take place. But that would have to mean to me that would have to mean in the first. I look at it this way: it's the Raiders picking 13. There's 12 spots ahead of them, and there's 6 quarterbacks there, and that should be an opportunity for them to pick at least one of those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Not everybody in that list is gonna take take 6 quarterbacks. There's going to be a lot of position players taken as well.
Yeah.
And the Raiders, I mean, I think this one here is like if you're looking for a later round backup, I got you. But as far as like him being, I mean, he's 24 years old, so like you have that part of it too, where everybody's saying, oh, some of the older quarterbacks, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, just to talk about a guy who's had one bad year, he's had one. He had one good year in the wrong direction. Like it wasn't like he built up to that one great year. He built down to it. Because every year has been a little bit worse and worse. And listen, it's South Carolina. Like I'm sure you had a great relationship with the coach. That's why you end up going there. But if you're not comfortable, if it's not there for you, don't go to a school there's college teams that are dying for quarterbacks. Go there. Like going to South Carolina did not seem like it helped his development.
Yeah, I think that we're getting into this crop of class now where this is going to be more and more prevalent moving forward, where the transfer portal for these quarterbacks, everybody is going to be thinking about what is the next step to get me to the NFL? Like, how do I get to the NFL? So now all of these quarterbacks, it's not going to be any of these quarterback classes now moving forward where there's just 2 guys. I just don't see that anymore because you're going to have guys that teams are going to fall in love with. You're going to have guys that media is going to fall in love with. You're going to have guys that are far reaching to every little corner where like, oh, well, did you hear about this so-and-so? Or did you hear about what this lady said about Spencer Rattler? Or she thinks he's a first round pick. Like there's going to be that now a lot, especially as the platforms get bigger and bigger for social media, access to a lot of the stuff that we have is going to get more and more. You're going to start to see a lot of these guys coming out on a year-to-year basis where it's not just, well, there's one guy in this draft class. Like I think the days of the Emmanuel or EJ Emmanuel being the only quarterback taken in the first round, I think those days are gone. The Kenny Pickett being the only quarterback taken in the first round. I really don't think we're going to see a whole lot of that moving forward because of the transfer portal, because guys are going to be like, it didn't work out for Arizona State. What could I do at LSU? And boom, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. And now he's going to be probably a top 5 pick in that regard. So I think that moving forward, it'll be interesting to see which guys end up being and making the best moves in their college career with the hopes of laying the path to making it to the NFL. And I think that the transfer portal is a huge, I would say, obstacle and wrinkle in evaluating these guys moving forward.
And you don't have access to a computer right now, right?
Just my phone.
Okay, so I just wanted to see 2021. I just want to see who's on that Oklahoma roster.
Mm-hmm. He was benched during the Texas game.
Yeah, so roster. I'm just interested to see because, like, I'm saying to myself, he didn't play well. So coming off of a good year, and he's never kind of regained that ever since then. So I kind of wanted to see who was on the roster that year. They still went 10-2. So let's see what happens as far as
roster, wasn't he?
Who was on that roster again?
CeeDee Lamb was there, wasn't he?
I'm trying.
Oh no, not 2021. Never mind.
No, I'm trying to look for the. Let's see here. Let's go by positions real quick. So you had. Let's see here.
Was Hollywood Brown there?
I'm trying to find the quarterback. The wide receivers. So we got wide receivers. We got. There's so many in college. Oh my god. Oh, Mario Williams, Marvin Mims, Michael Woods,
Mims there, huh?
Drake Stoops. Let's see here. Don't have anybody else really of note there, I don't think. And then running back wise, him and Caleb, he was a sophomore. Caleb Williams was the because Caleb Williams destroyed him after he took over. After he took over that one, I just think that is just like, he really. I mean, so like, I mean, obviously, if the weapons were not good enough for him, they were definitely good enough for Caleb Williams.
Sure.
Who came in and just lit the whole lit the Big 12 on fire, whatever conference they were in, as far as that goes, because they're changing conferences now. But I mean, like, when somebody comes in and just like plays fantastic after you, then how can I just excuse that like it was not a big deal? Like, it's weird.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you're gonna, I mean, if you, I don't know, and then if you're leaving, I think the biggest red flag for me with him is, let's just be real, like, Lincoln Riley is not. If you leave Lincoln Riley, usually there's something wrong with the quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
There are pathways for you to be incredibly successful under a coach like that. And for the most part, he was during his freshman year, his redshirt freshman year.
Yeah.
But he had someone way better behind him.
Yeah, and I just don't. I mean, I understand, and maybe it was. And we go back to that season, and I'll go back to his big season. Let's see here. We got.
He was 28-7 his redshirt freshman year. Yeah, 28.
You still had Mims, had Charleston Rambo, had Drake Stoops in there. Theo didn't really have a lot of. Not knowing what, but he still had a really good year.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm looking at. I don't see it. I mean, they had Creed Humphreys on that offensive line too. So I mean, there are. I mean, he'll make some plays here and there. I think we're just trying to people who are just really going in on
trying to talk themselves into it.
I think you can do that. I think you can do that and start ignoring some of the stuff, because I don't love what I saw. I don't love what I saw, and I think I learned from the Desmond Ridder draft, where that's something that happened. I think there wasn't a lot of quarterbacks in that draft, as I remember, and people were just like, "Hey, go with Desmond Ridder. He's the best one." And now it's just they in Atlanta is still looking for a quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, I can almost promise you he's not going to be the guy in 2024. And if he is, it'll be because the first 3 games are just feeler games for the rookie to get acclimated to the NFL, and then they're going to pull him after 1 interception and throw the rookie in there. I can't imagine they're going to go into 2024 with Desmond Ridder being the guy. So yeah, I think we're going to start to see a little bit of that moving forward.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as my thoughts on him, I think he could be like I said, a Gardner Minshew, not even a Gardner Minshew, because Gardner Minshew's shown he could start and maybe play his way into a playoff game if possible. I'm just not in love with what I saw. And if I'm wrong, hey, power to him. If I am, but I just don't see a team just turning it. First, he's gonna have to work his way into a starting role, because I don't see a team just turning everything over to Spencer Rattler.
So I have a pretty interesting summary of what I thought from everything that I studied this week on him, is that when he's good, he looks good, right? He looks the part. But when he's bad, he's really bad. And I think that it comes in the form of happy feet under pressure. I think it comes in the form of his production issues. I think it comes in the form of, I don't want to say a lazy approach to his pocket presence, but it's almost like when the play almost doesn't develop properly enough, I feel like those are plays where you start to see Rattler at his worst. And when it doesn't happen exactly quite to how it's drawn up, I feel like he struggles. He falls into his line a lot. He falls into bad throws on a back foot a lot in certain situations when it doesn't necessarily develop exactly the way he sees it pre-snap. And I think some of those plays have really held him back. I mean, in the last 2 years alone, he's at 37 touchdowns to 20 picks, and that's including rushing touchdowns. So he's not lighting anybody up at South Carolina, and I get that it's not all about statistics and whatnot, but at some point you have to look at the production and be like, after that redshirt freshman year in Oklahoma, it felt like the pressure just got to him. The comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, following Jalen Hurts, who was unbelievable in Oklahoma. Like,
Yep.
and like you're following these guys that Lincoln Riley has a pedigree of the quarterback position, and it just happened to be they had to skip one to get to Caleb Williams, who ended up being a Heisman Trophy, the next Lincoln Riley Heisman Trophy quarterback. So there was so much pressure coming off that, and I just felt like maybe he didn't really handle it well. Aside from the physical aspect of he's really small, he's not a big quarterback, and if he is, like I need to see him at the combine because most places have him listed at 6'1" and 200 pounds. I don't think. I think he's probably got more, like he's probably measured out to be like 6'6.5" maybe, and probably somewhere around the 215, the 218 level. That's Baker Mayfield size. Baker Mayfield has one of the better arms and as well as one of the better football minds that we've seen. You can't just give up or like a guy like that on Baker Mayfield. Like, there's a reason why he was the #1 overall pick. There's a reason why he's a Heisman Trophy winner. There's a reason why he won a playoff game and a division title this year. Like, that guy really is a legitimate starting playoff winning quarterback. And I just don't see that in terms of Spencer Rattler in that regard.
Yeah, I don't see it. I really don't see it. So yeah, I don't see it at all. So
he's definitely higher on my board. We just did Joe Milton, so he's definitely higher on my board. I think he's absolutely going to be drafted. I think he's absolutely going to be drafted in probably one of the top 4 rounds. I think that's a pretty safe bet in that regard because I do feel like when he's going to look good at his pro day, and I think he's going to look good at the combine. I think he's the type of guy where you see the mold of a really good quarterback. Like coming out of college or coming out of high school, like he looked every bit the part. And that freshman year, that redshirt freshman year, he looked every bit the part. Like he was the next guy. And maybe just a bunch of things happened. Could have been hurt. Could have had a falling out. We don't know. But like I said, when he looks good, he looks the part. But when he looks bad, it's rough. And there's some developmental tendencies that he'll really definitely need to work on.
And I think also too is like people can get caught in this point where they just start rooting for guys. I can feel it with like Bruce Feldman is kind of a guy who's rooting for Michael Penix.
Yeah.
But I can't personally get into the rooting for somebody. It's either there. You got to be kind of I think before, and I think, like I said, I was wrong about Zach Wilson, and like for me, it was more on the lines of I was just like kind of ignoring the things, just looking at the ability. But like there's other things that were there glaring that I was like, okay, like now I can see it. But you have to kind of be like a cold scout. Like you gotta be cold. You gotta be cold with it because you can't sit there and just say this guy's actually. I believe in him. I don't believe in him. Like if I had to use him for like if it was a later round pick and the Raiders wanted to grab him after maybe they drafted a Jaden Daniels or a Drake May or somebody like that or the kid from Michigan.
JJ
McCarthy, I could roll with it. Like, you know what I'm saying? If it's a 7th round pick, why not? And then maybe get a veteran in between. I think you could spell your offense for a couple of weeks, and he might cause a little bit of a quarterback controversy. But like by week 3 or week 4 of him playing, you'll say, okay, the starter needs to come back. Because he's not it.
There's some definite tendencies and abilities that he'll be able to be coached into him if he's willing to have the right work ethic and attitude. I think he will. I think he wants to be an NFL quarterback. I think he wants to be that guy that teams can trust in a moment like that. But like to go back to that lady thinking he's a 1st round pick, I don't think you can hand him the keys like that and be like, here's the expectation, because we've already seen him be handed the keys several times, actually, once with Oklahoma and then once with South Carolina, and it just didn't really work out. I mean, he just didn't have big enough shoulders for that plate, and that's just kind of what it is. He couldn't shoulder it the way he needed to, and I think he succumbed a little bit to the pressure of that. Now, if you're going to put the pressure of a 1st round pick on him, like there's no way. Like I don't see how someone could do that unless it's someone that is so desperate for a quarterback in a situational presence where a general manager might be feeling the heat from the owner that you have to get a quarterback, you have to do this. It's mandated from the owner to be able to find a guy. Other than that, just based on the merits alone, he's not a 1st round pick. No way.
No, he played 47 games, had 2,060 607 snaps. We also have he's a third and projection. He's a third round pick. So
Okay.
I could see like if he ever was successful, maybe a team like Pittsburgh where they're gonna run it and they can just they can do some bootleg stuff. They have Arthur Smith now. But I mean, they're going to be in the quarterback market as well. I mean, you heard some stuff about Russell Wilson possibly going there. Heard
Justin
stuff
Fields
about Justin
rumored.
Fields.
We've seen the GM season rumors at work.
Tannehill because he worked with Arthur Smith before as well too. So cool things there as far as that goes. But like I said, he's a guy who people are going to root for. I don't think and I think he adds to the class because this is a long list of really good quarterbacks.
Yeah,
he's definitely not in that class of the worst. I would say he's a guy who is probably ranked, right, but like if he's ranked below McCarthy and Penix and Nix, it's like the gap is like this.
Yeah,
it's not like he's not pushing towards it. Like in my mind, he's not pushing.
Yeah,
towards
I would put him in that middle tier range of quarterbacks. Those guys that are going to be in the developmental range. I don't think he's as bad as Joe Milton. I don't think he's as good as Michael Penix. And I think in the fourth or fifth, I have a fourth round grade on him. So I think the fourth round is probably the perfect spot for him because in the fourth round, you're either going to get a team like Atlanta that might have missed on a guy that they didn't get and just decide, okay, we're going to go with Ritter and Rattler next year. And that's the situation. Or you could look at a team like Minnesota if they bring Kirk Cousins back. Like, okay, now we got Spencer Rattler back here behind one of our proven veterans who works in this system, who runs well, and in a quarterback-friendly system that kind of actually has the arm of a Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins has a pretty good arm, and I think Rattler has a good arm too when he's consistently getting his reads down and getting his his arm angle down. I think he has a really good delivery. I think he's got a quick delivery for that type of offense. But like I said, I think we heard the term spatial awareness like 6 times by Tony Romo during the Super Bowl. And I think that's the critical in quarterback situation. You're going to start hearing that a lot. The spatial awareness of the pocket, being able to find the lane when you break down, being able to create the plays off script and having that spatial awareness when the rush gets there. Like that's going to be important moving forward. And I think he lacks a little bit of that.
Yeah, I would totally agree. You're hearing people like Ian Rappaport talk about the Raiders and going up to get a quarterback and all things like that. Do you have anything else? So I think a fourth round grade is what I mean. I think a third round grade, fourth round grade is where Spencer Rattler would be in my mind. You said fourth round. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of go off on? Spencer Rattler. I mean, he's going to give you everything he has.
Yeah,
like, it's not like he's not a slob. He's not like somebody who's gonna steal a check from you. Like he's gonna give you everything he has. It's just that it might not be like there's gonna be games where he might throw a 4 touchdown game and he's jumping up and down and he has the little towel coming from his waist, just like Baker Mayfield. So he kind of gives you a little bit of Baker Mayfield. He's just not as good as Baker Mayfield.
I think his interviews are going to be incredibly important. I think, and we won't have access to that obviously, but I think what he draws on the whiteboard and how he answers a lot of these questions is going to determine where he goes in this draft situation. Because I think that a third, fourth, and fifth round grade is probably appropriate for him. I have him as a fourth. I've seen him as high as an early third. I do not agree with the first round grade, but that's one person's opinion in that regard. I don't think that's the consensus that he's going to be a first round pick, but I think anywhere in the mid rounds is going to be appropriate for him. But I think that he's a guy that wants to be good, and I think he's a guy that wants to put in the effort and the work to be developed into if nothing else, at least the floor of a backup quarterback that you can use and maybe develop into the starting quarterback. He has physical traits with his arm delivery and his angle and his arm strength that you can see some real and skill, like real talent. And it's not necessarily some of the other guys that we've seen. He didn't come in he came in with high praise. Those guys didn't. And so you start to see how these guys mesh together based on the pathway of their college journey, if you will. Joe Milton was benched for Cade McNamara, and he didn't really necessarily work out in Michigan. He had to go to Tennessee. Now you start to see another guy where Jaden Daniels didn't really work at Arizona State. And you start to see like how important it is to surround these guys with the right attitude of coaching, the right staff, the right players to be able to mold these guys into something different. It's why quarterback is so hard to evaluate. It's why so many of these teams get this position wrong. So I think for him specifically, his interviews are going to be critical for what he says, how he says it, and his performance in those, to show where he's going to, like what his draft profile is going to look like after the combine. And I'm really excited to see his measurables and his combine. I think he's going to have a good pro day, and I'm excited to see what he does.
Cool. We did get a question. David from 702 wanted to know if the Raiders, if the Raiders had a Rattler, would they have made the playoffs in 2023? Is he better than Aiden O'Connell?
No, I don't think Rattler would have a good rookie year. I don't think he's the type of guy that you're going to be able to go in there with 10 games as a rookie and lead this franchise into the playoffs. That'd be tough. Do I think that he could play like day one? I don't think it would be a good idea. I think it would struggle day one.
I think that if you got put in the same position as Aiden O'Connell, I think instead of 5-4, they might have won 1 or 2 more games because of his ability to throw a deep ball and his ability to run. Like there's some games where like there's some spots where if the Raiders just, especially when you have somebody like Carlson, like, you know what I mean, as a kicker, where they're in that mid area where were forced to punt, where if he just took off and had the ability to take off, maybe that'd have been a first down. But I mean,
everybody points to the Minnesota game. Everybody points to the minute. It's like, well, we just had a competent quarterback.
Brian Flores was not having it.
I understand that they lost 3-0, but why did they lose 3-0? What was Brian Flores doing? Like, it's not just a situation where it's like, well, if we just had better quarterback play, we'd have won the Minnesota game. It's like, okay, that may be true, and you could say that about when we didn't cross the 50-yard line in the Saints game a couple years back and stuff like that. We just had a better quarterback. But it's like what these teams are doing. It's not that you're just showing up and you're having a bad game. There's a reason why some of these younger quarterbacks struggle against someone like Brian Flores, because they're not used to the stunt blitzes. They're not used to the shadow blitzing. They're not used to so much pressure coming at them, where you're not just inheriting a really good offensive line in some of these situations. And rookies generally don't do well under pressure anyway. It's very rare that a rookie just comes in and is like, well, he's really excellent against the pressure. Like even the best rookie quarterbacks that we've ever seen still have bad games against teams like that. You look at the CJ Stroud versus the Saints this year. He was blitzed a lot during that game. He really struggled. I think he only completed like 13 passes. That was at the time when he was the leading passer in the NFL, not just as a rookie, in the entirety of the NFL. It's because a lot of that pressure that Dennis Allen was bringing up was a game plan decision. I mean, they still lost, but it's a matter of getting to those rookie quarterbacks in that regard. So it's not just, well, we lost 3-0. All we needed was a touchdown or 6 points. We could have won. There's a reason why Aiden O'Connell struggled in that game. There's a reason why a lot of young quarterbacks or quarterbacks that are susceptible to the blitz, that don't have the creativity to get out of the pocket or a good feel for the rush, again, spatial awareness, there's a reason why they struggle against the blitz. And that's why Brian Flores was as successful as he was against some of these quarterbacks.
Yeah. One more question. We got Raider Mike from Connecticut, 860. What would be your biggest worry about Penix outside of injury? Well, it's hard to say outside of injury. But thank you for the question. I would say just that accuracy when he's not on. Like, you know what I mean? Because his accuracy can be very, very waning. I wonder about the pressure up the middle. Because when Michigan pressured him up the middle, listen, like as much as like I give Michigan a lot of credit for winning that game, winning national championship. They built for it. They built for it over a 6-year period.
Yeah.
Going back-to-back playoffs and having that horrible loss to TCU to come back the next year and win it, it shows you all you need to know. But I would say the game was there for Michigan, for Washington. The game was there. Like the big plays were there, and like it seems like a Doomsday, like all those guys were. They were. I mean, I'm not saying they were wide open, but they were open. They had opportunities to score in that game, and he just doesn't. He didn't have it that day. And
he had a bad game against Michigan.
He had a horrible game.
There's no other way around it. You can't. I would not blame pressure. I wouldn't blame the receivers not getting open. I wouldn't blame play calling.
It was real bad.
Game. He had like the miscommunication with the Dunze that led to the wide open miss. The first drive where he missed his target McMillan in the end zone, who was wide open. The pressure up the middle that he wasn't dealing with well. The off target throws. It looked like, and this is all reality too, and we see this a lot when it happens. When players just have bad games, it looked like Lamar Jackson in the AFC Championship game. It really did. He just struggled. He just had a bad game, and obviously, just like Lamar Jackson, that's the worst time to have a bad game in that regard. Just like the national championship, so it's the worst time for Michael Penix to have a bad game. But what would worry me the most with Penix, outside of the medical stuff, is he going to be? Is his arm going to save him under duress? Is his arm talent, his decision making with his arm, because he has a rocket arm, he has a fantastic arm, but is it going to get him into trouble when he's just trusting his receivers like he did in Washington, when he's just throwing into double coverage to Rome Odunze or McMillan down deep? Like, he's not going to have a lot of those guys next year unless the Raiders draft him and he has Devontae. But Devontae is a completely different wide receiver than Rome Odunze is, or Jalen McMillan. Jacoby Myers is a completely different receiver than those guys. It's not necessarily that they're going to break off their route, come out and score 50-yard pass or a 50-yard touchdown and stuff like that. Like that's just not how it's going to work a lot of the time next year when he's drafted. So my biggest worry is he's going to trust his arm too much, and is it going to get him into trouble when the play breaks down? And I think that's my biggest worry. His processing is fine. His decision making, I think is good, but needs work. And I think his athleticism is going to be a little bit better than what people think. And I understand the concern, but outside of his medicals, I think it's going to be, is he trusts his arm too much when he needs to creatively make the right decision at the next level. I think that's my biggest worry with him.
I can't wait. I really can't. I mean, this is going to be like the ratings for NFL Network can't wait, but the ratings for the first night, not the first night of the draft or the combine, but the night where they do the quarterbacks, people are going to be calling out of work.
Yeah,
to watch the combine as far as that goes. It's gonna be fun. It'll be fun.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait. I
I haven't missed a draft since 1998. I haven't missed a pick since 1998. So I can't wait. My first Raider player I ever saw draft was Charles Woodson. I loved the idea that the whole story leading up to the Peyton Manning versus Ryan Leaf situation back in '98. Like ever since then, I've just paid so much attention to it. I love the draft. I love it. I love everything about the NFL draft. I can't wait.
Before we go, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 Raider free agents I'm going to name for you, and I want you to know if you would bring them back. Jacob Johnson.
No.
Adam Butler.
Yes.
John Jenkins.
That's a tough one. I think that you're going to be able to find a John Jenkins DT in free agency.
Okay. Bilal Nichols.
Yeah. But I think people are going to go after. I think people are going to like Bilal Nichols. So I think there's going to be some competition for him.
He's still 27 years old. So I think so. Amik Robinson
contract.
Yeah, Amik Robinson.
No, he's gone.
Andre James.
No, definitely not. I hope not. At least I just don't think he's very good.
Me either. I love to see them actually move on from that as well. It's funny that one thing about the 49ers real quick. It's funny that they're trying to break away from. They fire Wilkes. People are the arrogance of a Niner fan to think that Bill Belichick would be anybody's.
He is not. I'll spoil it for you, Niner fans. He's not going to be the defensive coordinator for Kyle Shanahan. He's just not. He's not walking into individual I want all the power in the entire organization, and then be like, "Well, I didn't get it now, so I'll just decide to be a defensive coordinator for San Francisco." There's no way.
I think
he's working under anybody. I'll tell you that.
I think they're going to do. What I think is going to happen is this. I think they're going to do exactly what the Raiders did with Luke Getsy. They're going to drop it on a Friday. That's the news dump right there.
Yeah.
It was a Zoom call. They got rid of it. They know Luke Getsy isn't a popular choice. So what did they do? They just dumped it on Friday.
They did the press conference today.
Yeah, today.
At the end of the week. So.
Yeah, on a 4-day weekend when nobody's paying attention. So let me just drop it there. So I guarantee you, if it was Kingsbury, that wouldn't have happened. But I can see the Niners doing the same thing because the rumors are that he wants to hire Staley, and I can see them doing that.
Yikes, man!
I can see them doing that like on a Friday, just like even during the combine when nobody's paying attention, and just say, "Hey, Staley's a new head." And then,
you cannot convince me Brandon Staley would go in there and do a better job than Steve Wilks just did. What more do you like? What like? I understand the argument and the conversation that it just wasn't the right fit, but the results were the results, whether if it's the right fit or not. The results gave you an opportunity to win that game, and you didn't. And it's the story of Kyle Shanahan. It's the story of his coaching career that you had an opportunity to get it done and you didn't. That is a recurring theme now for Kyle Shanahan. So the fact that Steve Wilks had to be the scapegoat and be like it wasn't the right fit. You had a 10-point lead in a game where your defense held Patrick Mahomes to 19 points in regulation. They also your offense turned the ball over twice, and it was still the same result in regulation. And the defense gave you the ball twice. So you effectively turned the ball over twice. Your offense did. The defense gave you 2 takeaways. There was a punt return muff that was one of the turnovers on that situation, and he still held Patrick Mahomes to 19 points in regulation. I don't know what else you want out of the guy. So whether or not it was the right fit is irrelevant versus who is responsible for losing that game. It's your job to make it fit, and you changed his philosophy as a defense coordinator, and it still worked because they were still top 5 in DVOA, and they still did what they needed to do in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So the one last thing, because I thought it was gonna be the last thing, but the tour, the album tour for Antonio Pierce continues. So he was on the Rush today with Max Crosby, his best player, and they're talking about Jaden Daniels a little bit, and I'm interested to see about who else do they like? Because I think after the combine, he's not passing Washington. It's not happening. So when they see that kid throw, when they see that kid run, unless he just tears an ACL, and even then they still might draft him second.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Caleb. I think it's going to be him. I think people in Chicago might even end up taking, a look at maybe drafting Jaden Daniels first overall. But this whole idea, I know it's Jaden Daniels. I know he coached him and all that stuff like that in Arizona State. But I'm kind of fascinated to see who else they like.
Yeah. Yeah, well, based on the press conference today, there's not one quarterback that they like. There's not one style that they like. My problem with that is you were hired into yeah, exactly. My problem with this whole situation is that you're grandstanding the idea that you could build an offense around anybody, and that's just not true. We saw that last year. For all the people that didn't believe or that did believe in Justin Fields last year or this year as Raider fans, when the rumor was there might be an opportunity to get him, we sure saw the narrative change very, very quickly when now Luke Getsy becomes our offensive coordinator. Then it becomes, well, maybe he failed because Justin Fields wasn't that good of a guy. So it felt like the narrative changed very, very rapidly the second Luke Getsy was hired and Justin Fields became the scapegoat for why Luke Getsy failed in Chicago. The idea that he can build an offensive system around just anybody, I would have to really see to believe, because I'm not just going to let someone convince me when I see the results on paper for myself. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to think who else comes out of that combine, the pro day, the interviews as one of the top of the guys on the Raiders board, because we know it has to be one of them. For the first time basically for the first time in our adult lives, the Raiders are actively saying we have to get a quarterback in the draft. They're saying this leading up to the draft. There has to be a quarterback. It has to be the guy. even during the Jamarcus Russell year, there were conflicting reports about Lane Kiffin wanting Megatron, and now we know that that's true. Later on, when all those reports have been confirmed, that the inner turmoil was Jamarcus Russell versus Calvin Johnson, and that with the number 1 overall pick. So even then, it wasn't a sure thing for in that regard. So like this is kind of like the first time where everybody's talking about quarterback for the Raiders, and it's true because it's obviously the easiest choice that you can make into getting a guy like that. So the Jaden Daniels thing feels like a pipe dream right now because you think Washington. I don't think he's gonna drop past 4. I think whether he doesn't get picked up by Washington or the Patriots and someone's going to trade for that 4th pick and get him, I just don't see how he falls out, and it has to be the Raiders to trade up to get him because they're not staying at 13 and getting Jaden Daniels. So, and I don't think they're trading up to 7 or 8 to get him either. So it's going to have to be one of those top 4 picks, in my opinion.
Yeah, to see you have to see who wants to drop, who wants to be in the top 3.
Yeah.
And drop all the way to 13. And see if they want to do that. All right.
It's gonna cost.
Hey, fuck those picks.
Yep.
Gotta do it. All right. So I know I had a bunch of technical issues before the show. I thank you for your patience.
Of course.
Raider Nation. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I know y'all been DMing me when y'all gonna talk about the big boys. We're gonna talk about the big boys, but 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We're gonna for 2 weeks, and it's the one that everybody wants to hear. For Raider Nation, Jay and Daniel. So we will do it in 2 weeks. We'll do Jay and Daniels, and then next week we will. We'll see. We'll see. What we hit up next week. I gotta look at the list. I gotta look at the list.
We're gonna say some good things about Jay and Daniel.
I always hook you up with a trailer, a Twitter trailer for you guys. So don't worry about it. I got you. All right, Raider Nation. Peace.
Cares, wants to score a touchdown every day.
I've loved my time at Oregon. I think that it was just a really good